Welcome to Breathe California TV. My name is Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer like hundreds of other people working to try to protect your lung health through Breathe California, the statewide lung health organization. Our guest today is Steve Sokolsky of CALSTART. You are going to be astounded, I think, because I was, about all of the things that are being done by business, most of which you can do as a homeowner or a resident, to reduce the contamination that causes lung damage. There is so much innovation occurring in transportation in the state, and Steve's on top of it. See you in 30 seconds.
It's given me a chance to go out and be with people who has the same problem, and it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. This is the Breathe California TV show. My name is Terry Trumbull. I'm the Volunteer Environmental Health Chair of the local chapter of Breathe California. We have 5 chapters throughout the state. Just in our chapter last year, we helped 150,000 people with breathing difficulties, asthma, respiratory problems, allergies. Most of our work, like most health organizations, gets spent on trying to help people that have already developed problems. But our guest today, Steve Sokolsky, is going to help us with the prevention. Like most medical areas, the area that we fall down on is trying to prevent damage, and Steve is going to talk about a lot of really good programs. So, welcome.
Thank you, Terry. Good to be here.
How are you going to live up to all the good things I said about you?
I could tell you a little bit about what our organization is doing, and I think you'll get a flavor of what's possible.
So what is CALSTART? That sounds like you're some sort of official state organization.
It does, and a lot of people get that confused, but CALSTART is a nonprofit membership organization. It's been around about 20 years, where we work with industry around all of the aspects of clean transportation, and we're specifically a transportation organization. So we work the policy side of it. We do technology commercialization. We do a lot to bring the industry together and provide services, communication services. And we also do actually consulting for fleets. We're helping individual industry fleets clean up their vehicle stock and get cleaner trucks on the road.
And it's hard to imagine anything more important. Transportation is about 70% of the contaminants that make air in the Bay Area unhealthy.
Exactly, and we're looking to not only look at the criteria pollution, but also more and more look at greenhouse gases as a cause of health problems. And
so really, explain that a little bit. What in the heck are criteria pollutants?
Things like nitrous oxide, particulate matter, things that cause immediate breathing problems, asthma, things like that, where climate greenhouse gas pollution comes from CO2 or methane, and they're basically coming out of the same tailpipe, but they're separate pollutants and they're treated separately.
And the third category I want to talk about, particularly in transportation, is toxics.
Toxic.
Because diesel fuel, the major form of business transportation, is about 70% of the lung damage in the state.
Diesel is a very toxic fuel. It's a very efficient fuel, but it's a very toxic fuel. It's gotten a lot cleaner with the vast reduction in sulfur. I know I've spent a lot of time in the Los Angeles area for work, and I can see the differences there just because of the new fuel regulations. But the sulfur in fuel causes a lot of problems, and there'll be certain areas along freeways, what they call cancer alleys, that truck traffic will be causing a lot of instances of asthma and breathing problems, especially amongst children and elderly.
So explain that cancer alley concept when you're talking about an interstate or some heavily used
No,
road?
it's interesting. There's one project that we're working on in Southern California. There's a interstate, or it's a highway that goes from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which are, I think, the fourth largest port in the world.
Yeah.
And there's about
So this is the 110, I want to
it's
say.
710.
710.
And
so it goes from Pasadena to...
It goes from the ports up to the East Los Angeles rail yard, where a lot of the containers are taken off the ships. They're trucked up 20 miles up to the rail yard, and they're put on container trains and moved around the country. But there's such a high concentration of traffic on that 20-mile stretch that it is all basically 18-wheeler trucks. They're all belching out a lot of diesel fuel contaminants. So the areas along the side of that transportation corridor is having problems, especially when you're talking about looking at expansion plans. The communities are saying, stop here. You're not going to expand, add more lanes, and bring more truck traffic in if it's not going to be clean traffic or zero emission traffic.
So just to switch, talk a little bit about Oakland. It's not the fourth biggest port, but it's a very large, it's certainly the second largest after the LA
and that's
Long
an
Beach.
exact same problem in West Oakland. There's a very strong concentration of health problems right along the corridor next to the port along 880. So that's as toxic an area as 710 in Los Angeles.
So this is a real important concept, and trucks probably contribute disproportionately, but we don't even have any of the 13 monitoring stations for air quality in the Bay Area along these freeways because we'd be blown out of the water. It's so bad.
Well, and it's interesting, in the Bay Area, our problems are not nearly as bad as some of the other areas of California. People look at down here in the valley or northern part of the Bay Area, but a lot of, because of the climate here, a lot of the pollution gets blown over the mountains into the Central Valley. And now the Central Valley, the San Joaquin Air District, is as bad, if not worse, than the South Coast area where everybody hears at Los Angeles.
South Coast is LA, yeah.
South Coast of Los Angeles has always been historically one of the most...
the most.
And now is being passed by the San Joaquin Valley because of the geography there, and there's a lot of transient traffic, the agricultural use there, but a lot of the Bay Area's problems get blown over the hill to the San Joaquin Valley.
Well, I hope everybody watches next week's show, which is going to feature my good friend Susan Marsland, and she and I have talked a lot about the issue out in the San Joaquin Valley. 28% of the state's energy is pumping water around, almost all there, and they're using just diesel pumps.
Oh, it's not. The state is doing a lot, as much as they can to clean up, but just the natural geography of the Central Valley causes, it makes it almost unsolvable.
Well, let's get back to our own area, not, depending on whose study you see, but the state says that 7% of San Joaquin Valley's pollution comes from us, and certainly they'd love to get rid of it. So there are two issues you've raised. One is a Cancer Alley effect along the road like 880 coming down here, where if you're nearby, you've got real high concentrations, but it's also blowing this way.
It's blowing around the whole Bay Area, and that's why we have a great agency like the Bay Area Air Quality Management District that is setting region-wide policies and is really investing smartly, not only on the transportation side, but in other clean air initiatives, because it is there is no just stable amount at one area. It blows all over the Bay Area.
So I teach at San Jose State in Santa Clara, and I get into trouble with what you and I have been doing for the first 5 minutes, which is focus on the bad problems. The good news is you and CALSTART have some solutions.
Well, there's a lot going on, and it is being encouraged and funded by a large number of agencies, not only locally, but statewide and nationally. Our name is CALSTART, but we work nationally. We have offices outside of California, in Michigan, and Colorado, and we do a lot of programs that have stakeholders across the country, especially in some of the commercial truck areas. One of the ones I'm mostly involved in is the High Efficiency Truck Users Forum, which is HTUF, we call it. And that is funded by...
For our audience, there's going to be a test on this shortly.
Exactly. HTUF is funded by, of all agencies, the United States Army.
Yeah.
They are looking to find connections with industry and what technologies are being developed on the commercial side that can be adopted on the military side. So they're very interested in making those connections, and we're administering that. And we kind of take an approach from the user's standpoint, where the users come together, and this is the fleets, the main commercial fleets, the UPSs, the FedExes, the Frito-Lays of the world, who are really doing a lot to clean up their fleets and are really spurring some of the the truck makers to develop some of these new technologies that are not only cleaner but are more efficient. And those things always go hand in hand. As you make a truck more efficient, it uses less fuel, and fuel burn correlates directly to greenhouse gases.
Well, one of the things that impressed me when maybe even surprised me, you know, I feel proud of myself. I bought a hybrid car 13 years ago. I'm an early adopter. And you've got hybrid industrial or commercial vehicles galore, and a whole array of other low emissions, even zero emission vehicles. Talk about the array of things.
Trucks now are really advancing in that low emission and zero emission area. Hybrid trucks, most of the truck manufacturers are now making a hybrid variant similar to a Prius or any other hybrid car. But they're now more interesting. There's more zero emission or pure battery trucks. Some of the major delivery fleets are using actual full battery trucks now, and if they put them in the right route, if they only need to go 100 miles a day, it fits the need perfectly, and if you put it in an urban setting, it's even better.
So I want you to expand on it, because it is so important to a person with a personal car to understand this. The biggest impediment to personal cars is a naive view about range. So I drive 20 miles getting to and from here.
And
any reason I can't use an electric car?
No, and we've seen studies, a vast majority, 80% of the people in this country drive 40 miles a day or less. Any electric car can go 40 miles with no problem. And most of the new ones now can go 80 miles to 100 miles. And the same is now being said for trucks. And the thing about trucks, and when you're working out of a centralized fleet location, is that you can put the right technology on the right route. So if you have a high stop and start route in an urban area, you can put a hybrid truck, because those are very conducive to stop start. Yeah. Or if you have an urban setting,
even better is an electric one.
Even better is an electric one. If you're doing urban delivery, you can have electric, a pure electric delivery truck. So that technology is advancing long beyond the consumer market now, and because those fleets use so much more fuel than you and I do, the benefit is so much greater.
So one of the things, just a little comparison to diesel, I see diesel left on. There's something about them that they work better by being left on than when you have a stop and start situation. Electricity responds automatically.
Yeah, exactly. The fleets love the electric models because torque, which is the power you get at startup, is at 100% when you start an electric truck or an electric car. And you don't have to ramp up to get all that power.
And diesel needs it.
And diesel needs to ramp up. So there's great benefits to these cleaner technologies, whether they be hybrid or electric, and they really do a lot to improve the operations of fleets too.
So an awful lot is being done to reduce the emissions and give you a high quality transportation. We're going to be talking with Steve Sokolsky some more in about 30 seconds.
The nice thing about Better Breathers Club is we go in and there's other people sitting around with oxygen. it's almost a relief that everybody looks the same in the room. It's a funny thing to say, but it's a good feeling. Breathe California means having resources available to us that will help guide us and make our lives easier.
This is Breathe California TV. We're talking with Steve Sokolsky about all of the stupendous improvements on reducing emissions, saving energy that are going on in transportation, commercial and industrial. So talk a little bit about biofuels. Last week we had a guest from a biofuels terminal in Redwood City who wanted to get a lot more attention. Is that something that's just for commercial industrial vehicles?
No, not at all. And that was one of the reasons we got involved with Breathe California. We're working with a local company called Propel Fuels. We got a grant through the U.S. Department of Energy to increase the infrastructure there, or the number of stations, biofuel stations in California. And this is biodiesel and E85 ethanol. And a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of cars out there in California that already are capable of running on E85.
And let me just interrupt so we can clarify. My understanding is that car manufacturers got a break on the emission standards by selling ones that convert easily to the E85 fuel.
And that became part of the credits they would get under the CAFE credits, what they call it. So they would get credits for having what they call flex fuel vehicles that can run on up to 85% ethanol, and the rest would be gasoline. And a lot of cars, if you look on the badge, you'll see flex fuel there. And a lot of people don't even know they have one. I think there's almost 500,000 flex fuel vehicles in California, but there's hardly any E85 stations. So we're working with this company Propel and a few other agencies, Breathe California and other coalitions around the state, to not only get these stations built, but get the word out that these stations are there, that they're available, and people can use them. And usually the cost is less per gallon than gasoline. Propel sells not only E85, but B5 or B20 biodiesel, which is 20% biodiesel. So if you run a car that has biodiesel compatibility, you can fuel up there.
So I guess I probably should have asked you earlier, what in the heck is biodiesel?
Biodiesel is basically, it's coming from a bio source, whether it's soy or other, maybe algae. Algae is a very upcoming trend in diesel, in synthetic diesel and biodiesel. So there are sources where you're getting the same performance of diesel, but from a non-petroleum source.
And how's that better than burning diesel?
Well, it's much cleaner, and not only for you're reducing particulate matter, but it's also better for greenhouse gas since it's coming from a biosource as opposed to a petroleum source.
And we're not having to drill for oil in the Gulf of Mexico or in wildlife refuges in Alaska to get it.
And there's also a lot going on with in the natural gas area. There's much more use of renewable natural gas now. Natural gas is becoming a bigger part of the transportation world, mostly for trucks, but also there's a certain amount of natural gas cars, and there's a few stations out there. But it's a petroleum source, or it's coming from the extraction of petroleum. It's much cleaner than gasoline or diesel, but it's still not 100% clean. But now there is a lot of biosources of what they call renewable natural gas that is really a game changer in terms of climate change, where these are the gas that comes from landfills or dairies or municipal solid waste facilities. That gas is captured, cleaned up, and it can be, in some instances, injected into the pipeline with regular natural gas, or even put into a car.
So one of the things you could help our audience with is we hear often that methane's coming off, or methane here or methane that. It's a terrible greenhouse gas.
It is.
So what's the difference between it and natural gas?
Well, natural gas is methane.
Exactly.
But if it's not burned, it can leak and seep and go into the atmosphere, and it is worse than CO2, much worse than CO2. But if you can capture it and combust it, then use it as an energy source. So it has the other side of the coin. The positive side of the coin is that you can use it as not as an industrial fuel to run turbines for power generation, for industrial power, or also for vehicle transportation.
So a little earlier you highlighted one of the problems, but industrial and commercial sources don't have it. You know, you and I driving our own cars, you know, we may only go to Tahoe once or twice a year, and that's why my wife has a longer range car, but I could drive an electric one with no sweat. But people worry about, if they have 2 electric cars, having enough spots to fill up. But VTA doesn't have that problem with their buses. They're all operating here, and delivery trucks don't have that problem. How do we get enough sources for delivery? You mentioned that a little bit earlier.
Fuel sources, I think infrastructure is now the area of concentration which will get a lot of investment, and where fleets can find a lot of solutions to their operational needs. And with fleets, it's easier for them to alter their operations depending on the availability of fuel. It's a little bit tougher for you and I. We got to go to Tahoe, got to go to Tahoe. If there's no station there.
It's hard to ever say that.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
You know, our psyches need it.
But if a VTA, it's interesting, we're doing a project with VTA on zero emission buses, fuel cell buses, and also pure battery electric buses. And if the routes are if they can plan their routes accordingly and drive with the range in mind, then it fits into their operations well. And more transit agencies are doing zero emission solutions.
So I asked my students this question. I teach an energy policy class. 10 years ago, Governor Schwarzenegger was telling us that hydrogen fuel was the solution to all of our problems. So where is that now?
One of the solutions. It's going to be, we use the phrase, instead of a silver bullet, there's going to be silver buckshot. And it's going to be a lot of different solutions for a lot of different applications. And one fleet or one type of user might use one fuel as opposed to another. So fuel cells and hydrogen will be a great solution for transit, for some heavy duty trucking, probably not for light duty transportation or personal vehicles. Yes. Natural gas is going to be a major player for trucking. Electricity is going to have applications for both light and heavy duty. So it's going to be a lot of different solutions to a lot of different problems.
So talk a little bit about the use of electricity, because I think it works from our customers. We recently had a city with the utilities on the show talking about the city was trying to encourage people to fill up, if that's the right term, their electric cars at 2 or 3 in the morning, and was changing its rate structure to fit that. Is that available for business, or is it going to be available?
No, it is. This time of use pricing that is being adopted by a lot of utilities is a great tool, because use is much less in the middle of the night, but they can adjust their rates. The need to generate at that time of the day is less. So to encourage a little bit more use, they can lower the rates. So if you have a plug-in vehicle, a Chevy Volt or a Nissan Leaf, and you plug it in when you get home, you can take advantage of those time of use rates where it's much lower than if you did it in the middle of the day. But businesses can take advantage of that if they're a fleet and they're fueling their fleet vehicles. But one of the other areas that we're finding as a way to kind of compensate is we're working with businesses on workplace charging opportunities. As more and more electric vehicles hit the streets, most people will be charging at home. There'll be occasional public charging out there at large centers of business like an airport or shopping centers, but you'll see companies like Google and Apple and others who are really providing a lot of opportunity to charge at their facility for their employees, and that is a real good middle point. It increases the range. If people have any anxiety about the range of their electric vehicle, they plug in at home, they can plug in when they get to work, and by the time they leave at 5 o'clock or whenever, they have enough to get home with no problem. So it's a three-pronged stool there, but it covers a lot of different aspects of the charging.
Yeah, I think your point is real significant. If you're commuting from Almond Valley to a job in Palo Alto, you ought to be able to get a car with the range. I would contend that you could, but to get over any discomfort or to allow you to go to the Giants game afterwards, your employer ought to be able to allow you to plug in.
That's where the term range anxiety came from, and I think this is just one of the tools that can be used to address that.
So we got a couple of minutes left. What have I not touched on that you wanted to hit?
Well, no, there's a lot of things that are going on, especially here in the Valley. I talked about VTA, but we're working to not only demonstrate but deploy new technologies in transportation. One of the things that we're working on right now is with our partner Caterpillar. Their equipment is being used at the BART extension at Warm Springs, and they have a brand new hybrid excavator. It's called a hydraulic hybrid excavator, but it captures and reuses energy in earth moving applications. It's being used and demonstrated here at the Warm Springs extension that's being funded in part by the California Energy Commission.
That's pretty fantastic. It's just we're down to about 30 seconds now, so I kind of want to give you a chance to wrap up.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities to exhibit, demonstrate, and deploy clean transportation technologies, and there's so much going on in the commercial space where trucks are involved, where fleets, where off-road equipment. It's mind-boggling what the potential is.
So we've been talking with Steve Sokolsky of CALSTART. There are lots of opportunities for you to save money and save energy. See you next week with another exciting guest.